Namaste and welcome once more to this course on Introduction to Basic Spoken Sanskrit. In our last few sessions, we've looked at an introduction to the language itself, and then we also learned how to introduce oneself and the others. In this particular session, which is the lecture number 5, I propose to introduce you to basic verbs and some conjugations. The objectives of this session would be to do a brief revision of what we have looked at previously, to learn some adverbs of location as in here, there, how do we say these things in Sanskrit, then to be familiar with a few oft used verbs for daily use, and then to learn to conjugate them in the present tense as well as in the imperative, which is the order or the request form. And then finally to apply these verbs in a simple song that will help you remember what we have learned today. So in our last session, we had looked at the verb to be and not to be. So asti, nasti. So hastaha asti, kankanam, which is the bangle, nasti. Mala asti. So asti means all that is, and nasti means that which is not. So asti, nasti. Now just I wanted to share with you one fantastic thing about this particular verb. If you try and in your own native language to say that, I have a book, how would you say it? Supposing you had to say it in Hindi, it would be mere paas kitab hai. The English is I have a book. In Hindi, mere paas kitab hai. Let's take Bengali. Amar kache boi ache. Maybe Tamil. Yen kitte pustaka irukku. Irukku is the verb that you use. My Tamil is not great, so you will excuse the rest of it, but the verb itself would be irukku. So irukku, ache, hai all correspond to the verb to be and not to have. So in my contemplations on Sanskrit, I came across this fantastic characteristic of this language, which is that there is no verb to have in Sanskrit. The entire language has evolved over millennia, and they have not thought of the need to have a verb to have. Can you imagine how fantastic that is? So I would just like you to also think about these very special aspects of a language and how it relates to our thinking, how we are classifying our world around us, how does it relate to how we become. So just an extension from this in my own personal ruminations about this particular discovery that I had was that the Indian culture seemed to have a focus on being rather than having. The entire thrust of the Indian culture was never on how much you can have, because they figured out rather early that whatever you can have, you can also lose. But if you put your time and energy into being, that would be a lifetime asset. So just think about that. Think about how these simple verbs can have huge implications on the very philosophy of our life. So here we go. Lekhani asti. Lekhani asti. Lekhani atra asti. Lekhani atra, meaning here. Lekhani atra asti. And the question is, Lekhani kutra asti. Where is the pen? Lekhani kutra asti. And the answer, Lekhani atra asti. So we learned atra. Next, if something is there, far away, it would be tatra. So the door, which is far away, would say dwaram tatra asti. Dwaram tatra asti. Dwaram kutra asti. Dwaram tatra asti. Now, if you have another word, so if we talk of Ganga Nadi. Ganga Nadi atra asti. Is Ganga Nadi here? Na. Ganga Nadi tatra asti? Na. Ganga Nadi kutra asti? Ganga Nadi anyatra asti. Ganga Nadi anyatra asti, which means elsewhere. So here, there, elsewhere, which is another place. Next, we have Vayuhu, the air. Vayu atra asti? Am. Tatra asti? Am. Anyatra asti? Am. Vayuhu sarvatra asti. Vayuhu sarvatra asti. Sarvatra meaning everywhere. So, atra, tatra, anyatra, sarvatra. The question is kutra. And the last one in this series is, if things are in one place, then it would be ekatra. Say that. Ekatra asti. Now what I'd like you to do is repeat after me and do the actions. I really encourage you to use your hand movements in order to learn this language, because that really is the fastest way that you will learn it and also remember it. Okay, so can we try doing that? You repeat after me. So, atra, tatra, anyatra, sarvatra, kutra, ekatra. I'll repeat this again and I will put the kutra at the end. Alright, so let's do it together. Atra, tatra, anyatra, sarvatra, ekatra, kutra. Have you got that? Alright, so now what I propose to do is play a small game with you. And in this game, I'm going to confuse you. And you have to do what I say and not repeat what I do. Alright, so for example, if I say sarvatra, you have to show me sarvatra and not say tatra. So I will confuse you. I would say sarvatra, tatra, anyatra, and I want you to see if you have been able to follow along, because the entire emphasis on this course is on spoken aspect. It is important that you are able to apply your mind instantly to associate the words with their meanings. Alright, so let's start this game. So, atra, tatra, anyatra, sarvatra, ekatra, kutra. Once more. Now I will confuse you. So, tatra, tatra, sarvatra, sarvatra, anyatra, anyatra, ekatra, ekatra, kutra, kutra. I hope you've got it right so far. Last time, let's do it together correctly. Atra, tatra, anyatra, sarvatra, ekatra, kutra. Wonderful. We have kutra or where. So every time I write it up for you, I would like you to also start trying to recognize the letters slowly and slowly. And every time I also add the English transliteration below it, which is to help you learn up the equivalent of the Sanskrit sounds in the Roman script. So I would highly recommend that you try to familiarize yourself also with the written, because while this is a spoken class, it would definitely be an added advantage to learn up the writing as well. Okay, so there we go. So kutra, where, atra, here, tatra, there, anyatra, elsewhere, sarvatra, everywhere, ekatra, in one place. Brilliant. I hope you have followed that and you find it easy enough. So, let's look at a particular verse which uses what we have learned this far. It goes like this. Amantram aksharam nasti, nasti moolam anaushadham, ayogyah purusho nasti, Yojakah tatra durlabhaha. I'd just like to draw your attention to two places in the pronunciation. We have in the second line, which is ayogyaha purusho. So actually the words are ayogyaha and purushaha. Now because of a particular phonetic sandhi, we make it into ayogyaha purusho. But I'd like to further draw your attention to a precision. Since the ayogyaha ends with a visarga and is followed by the sound p, the yogyaha becomes yogyaf. Ayogyaf purusho nasti. And then in the next word we have yojakas tatra. Yojakas is also a form of sandhi, has already got a sandhi incorporated, because it should be yojakaha tatra. Now I tend to do this emphasis with the kaha, like saha, eshaha, but in real time, let's say in when we are using it in a fluid manner, it could be sah instead of saha technically. All right. So yojakah tatra durlabhaha. So let's try repeating that after me once. I'll make you repeat it, then I'll explain it to you, and then we'll try singing that out. Amantram aksharam nasti, nasti moolam anaushadham, ayogyaf purusho nasti, yojakas tatra durlabhaha. You got that? I would also highly recommend that when you are repeating this exercise, you close your eyes and you try and just recognize the sounds phonetically and learn it up as soon as you can. Now going to the meaning of this verse, it says a mantram. Mantram we all are familiar with, which is a special sound. A mantra means not a mantra. Aksharam, letter, nasti. So it says that there is no letter that is not a mantra. What does that mean? Every letter is a potential mantra. The next part, nasti moolam anaushadham. There is no root, moolam, which is anaushadham. Aushadham is medicinal. Anaushadham means non-medicinal. So there is no root that is not medicinal, which implies that every single root is medicinal. Next, ayogyaha purusho nasti. Yogyaha means capable. Ayogyaha, incapable. So it says that there is no human being who is incapable, which is a fantastic statement because it says that every individual is capable. And finally, what's the challenge then? If every letter is a mantra, if every root is medicinal, if every human being is a very capable person, then why is there so much of inefficiency? Why is there so much of illness? Why are there so many problems? So the last part of this verse gives us the answer. It says, Yojakaha, the one who will make these connections is rare. Yojakas tatra durlabhaha. Fine? So, the call, I would guess, in this context is to become a Yojakaha. And that will make a difference to one's life as well as to the lives of people around us. Now, I would just like to sing this out to you, so you repeat after me. Amantramaksharam nasti, nasti moolamanaushadham, ayogyaf purusho nasti, yojakas tatra durlabhaha. In Sanskrit verses, we often had a singing along with it to respect the different meters because it definitely aided in memorizing something faster. So having done the Subhashita, which I would highly recommend that you try and memorize because it will be part of your personal vocabulary and your personal philosophy perhaps. So what we are going to look at next is the use of certain basic verbs. And again, I think that one of the best ways of learning Sanskrit is really to learn it orally first, because while there is a grammatic rule and it's very precise in its grammatic formations, what I have discovered is that essentially it is a language of sounds. So you can hear the logic, and once you hear the logic, it becomes much easier for the mind to retain the logic, rather than when you try to learn it up by rote only by looking at it and memorizing it. So I would say just repeat it, and you would be able to see the logic underlying Sanskrit grammar very often. So let's look at this now. So, eshaha piyushaha, eshaha piyushaha. And like I mentioned to you that when I'm doing eshaha, I'm actually doing it for an emphasis of the ending of the aspirate at the end. So you could just say eshah piyushah. Even, I mean, that is correct also. Okay, so here we go. So I would ask him to do a few actions and tell you the verbs and just repeat after me. So, gacchati, goes. Piyushaha, gacchati, gacchati. Agacchati, agacchati, which means comes. Agacchati, eats. Khadati, piyushaha khadati, or you can even use the pronoun eshaha khadati. Now, one interesting feature of the Sanskrit verbs is that it doesn't really it doesn't really go according to the gender. Like in Hindi, you would say wo ja raha hai, and if it's a lady, wo ja rahi hai. The conjugation of the verb will depend on the gender of the person enacting that action. In Sanskrit, the gender doesn't play a role in the conjugation of the verbs. So we have saha gacchati. If it was a lady, it would be sa gacchati. And now we have piyushaha. So piyushaha khadati. Then eshaha khadati. Or if there was a lady here, you can also say esha khadati. Alright. So let's get back to the verbs. So khadati, pibbati, likhati, likhati, pathati, pathati. Bhavatah nama kim?
Mama nama pijisakanti palaha.
Vadati, vadati. Play a game. That's a 6. Kridati, kridati. Say that, kridati. Now sit. Upavishati, upavishati. Stands. Uttishtati, uttishtati. Upavishati, uttishtati. Okay, so we'll just make him do the verbs and you see if you can get it already along with me first. Okay, so gacchati, gacchati, agacchati, agacchati, khadati, khadati, pibbati, pibbati, vadati, vadati, kridati, kridati, likhati, likhati, pathati, pathati, upavishati, upavishati, uttishtati, uttishtati. Lovely. So now the question is, Piyushaha kim karoti? We'll just make him do 3 verbs and let us see if you can guess it. Just 3 verbs. So do anything you want to. Piyushaha kim karoti? What is he doing? Piyushaha khadati. Uttamam. Piyushaha kim karoti? Pibbati. Excellent. Kim karoti? Kridati. Kridati. Uttamam. Then, and the last one. So, kim karoti? Pathati. Piyushaha pathati. Wonderful. Dhanyavada. This is the present tense or the Vartamana Kala. And another thing you would notice is I've also mentioned that this is for the second person. So if you look at the screen again, you will see it is the second person, and I also have to mention that this is the lat lakara. Lat is a technical reference to the present tense in Sanskrit grammar. So we have it here quickly. We have saha gachati or sa gachati or tat gachati, irrespective of the gender. And then we also have the you formal for masculine and feminine. So bhavan gachati or bhavati gachati. All the pronouns would apply for agachati. Then pathati, likhati, pibati, khadati, vadati, kridati, upavishati, uttishtati. So we had seen Piyush doing something. Now if I had to do the action, it would be aham gachami, aham gachami, aham agachami, aham agachami. Now because the verb is self-sufficient in itself, we need not even say aham. You can just say gachami, agachami, because the me at the end of the verb will tell you that I am doing the action. So gachami, agachami, khadami, khadami, pibami, pibami, likhami, likhami, pathami, pathami, vadami, vadami, kridami, kridami, upavishami, upavishami, uttisthami, uttisthami. And the question could be, kim karomi, what am I doing? Alright, so let's look at that in the written form. And as you see, it is there, aham gachami, agachami, pathami, likhami, pibami, khadami, vadami, kridami, upavishami, uttisthami. Very good. Now, based on this, there is a very nice Sanskrit song, and the song goes like this. So I suggest that you repeat after me and you sing after me along with actions. So, aham pathami sanskritam, aham vadami sanskritam, aham likhami sanskritam, sadaiva sundaraksharam. Yeah, let's look at that together. Aham pathami sanskritam, aham vadami sanskritam, aham likhami sanskritam, sadaiva sundaraksharam. Sadaiva means always, sundaraksharam means with beautiful letters. And the second para of this goes like this. Aham smarami mataram. Repeat. Aham namami mataram. I salute the mother. Aham bhajami mataram. I pray devotionally to the mother. Sadaiva bhakti purvakam. Always full of devotion. So let's sing that together. Aham smarami mataram. Aham namami mataram. Aham bhajami mataram, sadaiva bhakti purvakam. Wonderful. So, can we just sing that song once together, the whole of it? Aham pathami sanskritam, aham vadami sanskritam, aham likhami sanskritam, sadaiva sundaraksharam. Aham smarami mataram, aham namami mataram, aham bhajami mataram, sadaiva bhakti purvakam. Wonderful. And now coming to the the second person informal, we see that it is the pronoun tvam, and the question is tvam kim karoshi. Like I said, with verbs, because there is a certain coding in the verb, you have to pay attention to the endings. So the moment I say karoshi, you must understand that we are referring to the second person singular as well as for the present tense. Okay. So we have gachasi, agachasi, pathasi, likhasi, pibbasi, khadasi, vadasi, kridasi, upavishasi, uttishtasi. So, tvam gachasi, tvam agachasi, etc. So now I will introduce you to the imperative form, which is the lot lakara in Sanskrit, or the simple word is the ajna or the request or order form. So this is an important mood to learn because it is very applicable in our daily usage. So if I'll call Piyush up again, and now I want to tell him to go. So depending on the tone. So if I say gachatu, it definitely is not a request. Okay, but if I say gachatu, then it becomes a request. So gachatu. So you notice that the ti, gachati, becomes gachatu. The tu turns the present tense into the request or the ajna or imperative form. Agachatu, likhatu, pathatu, khadatu, pibbatu, vadatu, mama nama,
Piyusha Palaha,
kridatu, upavishatu, uttishtatu. That's it. So, if I have to now ask, tell Piyush to do something and he also answers, we'll see what that sounds like. So, like I said, it can be saha gachatu, which means may he go or go. It can also mean, or rather, it can also be used in the respect form of you. So, bhavan gachatu, or if it's a lady, bhavati gachatu. Fine. So, now if I tell this to him, then he can also answer. So, if I say gachatu, he can say aham gachami. So, I'll just do that for a few verbs so you know how it is applied. So, gachatu,
aham gachami,
uttamam, agachatu,
aham agachami,
clearly, aham agachami.
aham agachami,
Very good, uttamam. Khadatu,
aham khadami,
uttamam. All right, thank you. Dhanyavadaha. Let's look at that on the screen. We have gachatu, agachatu, pathatu, likhatu, pibbatu, khadatu, vadatu, kridatu, upavishatu, uttishtatu. You've noticed that I've tried to highlight in a different color the endings of the verbs. And then if you have the simple form, which is with the you informal, it would be gacha, tvam gacha. So again, the subject is not required. Even if you just said gacha, the subject would be implied in the way the verb has been conjugated. So if you have to do the rest of the verbs, it would be tvam gacha, agacha, patha, likha, pibba, khada, vada, krida, upavisha, uttishta, etc. So you can just based on the respect form of the verb, you can arrive at the informal you conjugation for it. And this is another form which is used in the Sanskrit conjugations to denote may I do something. So if it says may I do something, it would be aham karavani. So instead of karomi, the m gets replaced by the n or the n sound. So here we have, if you want to say aham gachami kim, may I go please, you can replace this with aham gachani. So the m gets replaced by the n. Aham gachani, agachani, pathani, likhani, pibani, khadani, vadani, kridani, upavishani, Tishtani. Great. So, with this we have learned how you can say may I do something, already incorporated in the way the verb has been conjugated. And as in most classes, I'd like to end with a quotation to highlight some special aspect of Sanskrit, and this is a quote by Sri V. Raghavan. He says, "The foundations of Greater India were laid in Sanskrit. The role of Sanskrit through centuries has been to rejuvenate it with its infinite resources, local languages and cultures, to absorb local excellences and to evolve a constructive and harmonious synthesis. And this role Sanskrit can still perform, not only for all India, but for the whole of Southeast Asia." This is something that was observed. If you go to the Southeast Asian regions, you see how their language bears a lot of similarity with Sanskrit words, and therefore a good knowledge of Sanskrit, like I mentioned in one of our earlier sessions, can help us to have an access, easier access to many languages across the globe. And just to end, I would like to share another insight that I had when studying sociolinguistics. So it was found that in the European language, the Romanesque languages like French, Spanish, etc., each of these languages then broke up into different nation groups. So French became the language of France, Italian became the language of Italy, Sanskrit Spanish the language of Spain, etc. But we find that while the different languages evolved under Sanskrit, the country still held together as a whole. I think that is something that needs to be thought about. So Sanskrit remained a mother, and the daughters and sons of this language stayed together as one family. And that's probably a big role that Sanskrit can play in the future of this nation. As we come to the close of our session, so here I'd like to introduce you to a new word, which is Shubhamastu. Shubham means good or well-being and everything that's auspicious, and Astu means so be it. So may well-being be yours. Shubhamastu. And finally, Dhanyavadaha.